Hey, what's up? John Sonmez here, and today we are going to be continuing our series on Seneca's letters to Lucilius. So you can check out the whole playlist here. We are on letter 7 today, which is titled On Crowds. And if you don't know what's going on, basically I'm going to be reading through the letters, sort of explaining some of this, giving some commentary where I can. If you are interested, make sure you click the subscribe button and click the bell so you don't miss any notifications for new videos that come out. And you can check out all the videos on the playlist. So this one is titled On Crowds, and it starts off as 1. Do you ask me what you should regard as especially to be avoided? I say crowds, for as yet you cannot trust yourself to them with safety. I shall admit my own weakness, at any rate, for I never bring back home the same character that I took abroad with me. Something of that which I have forced to be calm within me is disturbed. Some of the foes that I have routed return again, just as the sick man, who has been weak for a long time, is in such a condition that he cannot be taken out of the house without suffering a relapse. So we ourselves are affected when our souls are recovering from lingering disease. To consort with the crowd is harmful. There is no person who does not make some vice attractive to us, or stamp it upon us, or taint us unconsciously therein. Certainly, the greater the mob with which we mingle, the greater the danger. So basically what he's saying here is this. He's saying that you can't trust yourself in front of other people, in front of the crowd, because when you hang out with other people, when you're in the crowd, when you're not in your solitude, when you're not focusing on your philosophy, when you're not focusing on your personal development, right, on the things that you're trying to accomplish in life, in some way you're going to become corrupted, right? It's going to be difficult for you to maintain, to be strong, because you're going to be influenced, right? Peer pressure, the mob mentality, the crowd, like all of these things, they influence us, right? And today we could really think of this as kind of the social norms or social constructs. You could even talk about popular movies and television and pop culture that basically influences you and causes you to stray from the path, right? It's interesting that Seneca says here, I never bring back home the same character that I took abroad with me. Something of that which I have forced to calm within me is disturbed, right? So basically, he goes out and he encounters the crowd and he encounters other people, and he loses something that he had worked on quelling within himself, right? There's always going to be someone that's going to make some kind of vice attractive to us. I think that was an interesting point. Or taint us unconsciously there within. So what can we do about this, right? What is the answer, right? Is it to live as a hermit? Is it to live in solitude? No, it's not really that. What it is it's to just be aware of this and to spend enough time in your own private study, in your own, fortress of the mind, fortress of the solitude, as Superman had it, but basically so that you can renew yourself and work on yourself. And you got to realize that, yes, you're going to have to go out into the crowd, but be prepared. Be prepared when you're watching television. Like, don't watch television, right? Be prepared when you're watching the news. Don't watch the news, right? All of these things, like if you're going to go out and do this stuff, be prepared that it is going to corrupt you in some way. It is going to change you. It is going to influence you. You may say that you're immune to this stuff, but you're not. You're 100% susceptible to other people's influences. You're 100% susceptible to advertising, to media, to television, to all of these things that are influencing you and changing you. So be aware of that at least. Number 3 says, what do you think I mean? I mean that I come home more greedy, more ambitious, more voluptuous, and even more cruel and inhuman because I have been among human beings. By chance, I attended a midday exhibition, expecting some fun, wit, and relaxation. An exhibition at which men's eyes have respite from the slaughter of their fellow men, but it was quite the reverse. The previous combats were the essence of compassion, but now all the trifling is put aside and is pure murder. This speaks to the times, right, where they had their Roman Colosseum, and they had quite violent games there, right? But it's also the same thing watching all this shit on television and exposing yourself to this violence, right? It's very easy to get caught up in that and to become sort of numb to that, right? And it will cause you, it will change you. It will change you. 4. Many persons prefer this program to the usual pairs and to the bouts, quote, by request, Of course they do. There is no helmet or shield to deflect the weapon. What is the need of defensive armor or of skill? All these mean delaying death. In the morning they throw men to the lions and the bears. At noon they throw them to the spectators. The spectators demand that the slayer shall face the man who is to slay him in his turn, and they always reserve the latest conqueror for another butchering. Okay? The outcome of every fight is death, and the means are fire and sword. The sort of thing goes on while the arena is empty. People were watching and spectating this, right? Watching these people be slaughtered for entertainment, for fun, back in these times. Yet we do the same thing, right? We simulate it, right? Because it's wrong to actually do this, but we simulate this. We watch this, not just through movies, but through news, through media, right? We're looking for controversy. We're looking for trauma, right? We want to see bad things happen to people, and because that entertains us. Honestly, that's this is what society is, and so you have to really be conscious of that and say, am I falling into this, and what will it lead to if I do? Right? Will you become like those people, back in the Roman days that wanted and sought this mindless violence for their entertainment? And what has happened? How does that corrupt your character when that is your source of joy in the world, is other people's suffering, right? Think about that. Number 5, you may retort, but he was a highway robber. He killed a man. And what of it? Granted that, as a murderer, he deserved this punishment. What crime have you committed, the poor fellow, that you should deserve to sit and see this show? And that's the crux of it right there, right? I love that quote here. It's what crime did you commit that you have to sit and watch this shit? In the morning they cried, kill him, lash him, burn him. Why does he meet the sword in so cowardly a way? Why does he strike so feebly? Why doesn't he die game? Whip him to meet his wounds. Let them receive blow for blow, with chests bare and exposed to the stroke. And when the game stopped for the intermission, they announced a little throat cutting in the meantime, so that there may be still something going on. Very, very violent picture that he paints here, but I would just ask, is it really that much different today, right? From what we need to be entertained today, right? Number 6, the young character which cannot hold fast to righteousness must be rescued from the mob. It is too easy to side with the majority. Even Socrates, Cato, and Laelius might have been shaken in their moral strength by a crowd that was unlike them. So true it is that none of us, no matter how much he cultivates his abilities, can withstand the shock of faults that approach, as it were, with so great retinue. I don't know. Okay, so anyway, he says, number 7, much harm is done by a single case of indulgence or greed. The familiar friend, if he be luxurious, weakens and softens us imperceptibly. The neighbor, if he be rich, rouses our covetousness, the compassion. If he be slanderous, rubs off some of his rust on us, even though we be spotless and sincere. What do you think the effect will be on character when the world at large assaults us? You must either imitate or loathe the world. Very much the same thing that he's saying here, and he's using some historical figures of Socrates and Cato, and he's saying that they would even be shaken in their moral strength, right? With a crowd so unlike them. So, if you think about it, a lot of this mob mentality, a lot of this crowd mentality, and you see this happen all the time, where people do atrocious, violent things, and you wonder how these people couldn't have individually done this, but they got into that mob mentality, right? Other people were doing it, so they thought it was okay, right? The same thing, you can imagine with these gladiatorial games back in the day, with all this violence and the kind of ridiculous, just bloodthirsty crowd, right? How did that come about? Well, one person being exposed to that, seeing that on their own, might object to that and say, I don't want to watch this shit, right? But when you've got a whole bunch of people and they're all cheering, and then that person sees that, you start to become it starts to become okay for you, right? And you start to become desensitized, and it becomes the norm. It's just really important to understand this, that it's imperceptibly sometimes creeping in on you, especially just being around different people, right? And he's talking about the crowd here, but he also talked about the various types of people that will eventually cause you to your character to stumble and to fall based on just being around them, and how it imperceptibly changes you over time. Number 8, But both courses are to be avoided. You should not copy the bad simply because they are many, nor should you hate the many because they are unlike you. Withdraw into yourself as far as you can. Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is mutual, for men learn while they teach. So, a couple things here. Obviously, men learn while they teach. Very, very important concept, something I talk about a lot on this channel, this idea that the best way to learn something is to teach it. A lot of the stuff that I quote teach on this channel teaches me, right? I learned from doing that. Yeah, just look for the people that are going to make you better. That's the key, right? And so, you can look at this and you can look for the things that are going to make you better, right? As, in today's society, right? Is watching this shit movie or the shit television show, brainless, sitcom or whatever it is going to improve you? Or is it just like some senseless violence or whatever it is? It doesn't even have to be violent. It's just mindless drivel, right? Or maybe you should read a good book, right? I've got, check out my playlist on book reviews and whatnot if you want some book ideas. But, that's what you should be focusing on, is controlling that influence, what influence that you have. It doesn't mean that you're totally withdrawing from the world. It means you're just finding the right people. But he does say, you should as much as you can, withdraw into yourself as far as you can. Number 9, there's no reason why pride in advertising your abilities should lure you into publicity, so that you should desire to recite or harangue before the general public. Of course, I should be willing for you to do so if you had a stock in trade that suited such a mob as it is. There is not a man of them who can understand you. 1 or 2 individuals will perhaps come in your way, but even these will have to be molded and trained by you so that they will understand you. You may say, for what purpose did I learn all these things? But you need not fear that you have wasted your efforts. It was for yourself that you learned them. Like when you go out into public, people aren't even going to understand you. Like you're a philosopher, you're studying philosophy, you're trying to improve yourself, you're trying to improve your mind, your character. Maybe there's like a couple of people that you're going to actually be able to train and bring in, but you're going to have to train them. And then the question is, well, why did I learn all this shit? Well, you did it for you. To develop yourself, not so you could brag and show people how awesome you are. They're not going to understand you. Number 10, in order, however, that I may not today have learned exclusively for myself, I shall share with you 3 excellent sayings of the same general purport which have come to my attention. This letter will give you one of them as payment of my debt. The other 2 you may accept as a contribution in advance. Democritus says, one man means as much to me as a multitude, and a multitude only as much as one man. The following also was nobly spoken by someone or other, for it is doubtful who the author was. They asked him what was the object of all this study applied to an art that would reach but very few. He replied, I am content with few, content with one, content with none at all. The third saying, and a noteworthy one too, is by Epicurus. And he says, written to one of the partners of his studies, I write this not for the many, but for you. Each of us is enough an audience for the other. 12, lay these words to heart, Lucilius, that you may scorn the pleasure which comes from the applause of the majority. Many men praise you, but have you any reason for being pleased with yourself, if you are a person whom the many can understand? For good qualities should face inwards. Farewell. So what is he saying here, at this end point, right, with these 3 phrases? They're a little bit hard to understand, but he's essentially saying this. He's saying, don't go and try to please the crowds and the multitudes. Instead, first of all, do things for yourself, right? If you're writing, if you're speaking, if you're learning philosophy, do it primarily for yourself. And the value, these guys, they said, I value the multitude as much as I value one, and I value one as much as the multitude. What does that exactly mean? It means this. It means that, I don't care, and you shouldn't care if millions of people like you. In fact, that's probably a bad thing because you're probably not actually speaking the truth, right? You're probably telling people what they want to hear. But what he's saying is that that doesn't matter. What matters is that, first of all, what you think is right, but second of all, that someone that you actually value values what you say. It doesn't matter. Like that person who actually understands you, who actually has value in your eyes, for them to have value, to see you as valuable, or what you're saying or what you're doing is as valuable as the multitude, right? As many, many people. And this all ties back into what we talked about earlier in this letter, is just this idea of the crowds, right? And this is why this dynamic exists, is because why does a person, who would be opposed to like the crazy violence of the arena, right? The ridiculous amount of just like senseless violence, why would that person then go and cheer and drink and be excited and want to see some throat cutting at the intermission, when they go out with their friends in the crowd, right? It's because what happens is that they want to please the crowd, right? It's because they value that opinion, because they value the worldly opinion, the social norm, these social constructs that have been created, right? And they want to fit in. And so they get the approval from other people by joining in the revelry, even when it's harmful to their soul. Does that make sense? And so when you are of that mind, of that kind, and you value the opinion of the crowd, and you value being liked by the crowd, you're much, much more susceptible to doing the wrong things, to corrupting your own soul, to corrupting your own character, to destroying what you've built, right? Because you're going to go with them in order to get that approval or applause, right? So what you have to do is you have to shut out the things in your life that are going to influence you in a negative way. That might be people, it might be media, it might be television, it might be books, it might be whatever it is, or music even. You have to shut those things out and directly construct your life and the things that come into your life that influence you in the way that you want to grow up, right? And it's going to be a much smaller window of things that you let in. So, all right, that's all I got for you today. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you click the subscribe button so you don't miss the rest of these letters to Lucilius. Like I said, you can check out the playlist, and I'll talk to you next time. Take care.